I am a suicide survivor. If you don't think you're important to somebody. After 9/11, I didn't understand what was going on with me. I didn't want to sleep at night because I didn't want to have those dreams. I do it for the sole purpose to help somebody not to go down that path. And that's really all I care about. Hey, Mental Health Warriors, I want to thank you for tuning in. I'm very excited about tonight's episode. I have a filmmaker who I've tried to get on my show now for 9 months, and he's been very busy, but he's finally got his schedule cleared up some to come on my show, The Mental Health Warrior. I'm super excited. So as you can see, Vincent's on the screen here. But before we jump into it, I just want to say, hey, be sure to go out and like all of our podcasts on, veteranstrashtalk.com. Visit our the store to get all of our merch. I'm wearing the Veterans Trash Talk t-shirt right now. Be sure and go out and get the Mental Health Warrior t-shirt. It's a t-shirt I say that can save a life because I got the crisis number on the back, because when you pass somebody in the airport or walking down the street, you never know who's having issues and problems. And a lot of people don't know what that text number is. If you're in crisis, text 741 to 741 and you can speak to a crisis counselor immediately, and they'll try to get you the help that you need. Tonight's show is going to be all about filmmaking, all about documentaries, and all about fun stuff. Real quick background. Vincent and I do have a little bit of a background. About 2 years ago, he was what should I say, contracted through Able to come and do a documentary on me on my military career, my suicide attempt. You can still see that out on able.com. It's the episode 1 of season 1 out there. And Vincent, you did an amazing job with filming that. I think it turned out that Surviving Suicide series, not just my series, but all 6 of them really turned out really well. And your company, Life is My Movie, did a really excellent job in doing that. And, I just want to say I'm just thankful for you to come on. One thing I want to talk about, because, we talk about this a lot on Veterans Trash Talk and on Mental Health Warrior, is, how do you get into doing what you do and doing filmmaking? I really want to know, you've done some really amazing documentaries. And if you go out to his website, you'll see it shown on the screen right now, lifeismymovie.com. Go out and look at some of the amazing documentaries and moving documentaries that Vincent and his company has made, and the work that you're doing, not only to help, kind of like I do with Mental Health Warrior. We talk about veterans, the importance of veterans, but I talk about everybody, right? Everybody has issues, everybody has problems, and we really want to shine light and do issues. But some of the documentaries you've done, and I'll let you talk about them, are pretty amazing. And I'm really honored to have you on my show, but also to have you as a friend. We talk quite a bit when I'm get stressed out, and I shoot you a text, and when you're stressed out, you'll shoot me a text, and we'll talk about it. But I really, really appreciate our friendship, and what we've kind of had since you filmed that documentary on me about 2 years ago now. So with that, Vincent, I'd just like for you to kind of, introduce yourself to the audience there, kind of talk about how you got into doing filmmaking and making documentaries, and we'll just kind of go from there with the conversation.
No, thanks so much, Cliff. I appreciate you having me on, and sorry it took so long. It's just been one of those crazy time periods, as I'm sure everyone realizes, since the pandemic, with adjustments of industries and the way things work. But yeah, I got into filmmaking. As early back as elementary school. I was one of those like broadcast journalism, like the TV news kids. Mm-hmm. And, it was a different time then. I'm 42. So it was still like VHS tapes and a switcher and, doing things that direction. I felt like there was something that I gravitated towards, of the ability to tell stories to bring people to different worlds that they couldn't experience of their own, or to help them appreciate something that maybe they didn't truly understand. I think sometimes we look at, the information that we have now, which wasn't a thing then, and just how you have to filter through it. I can Google anything I want to find the answer, but if I don't look at 5 things or go deep enough, I really won't truly understand it. So I think that's really been my kind of calling, is, since I went to school for journalism, telecommunication, as well as film studies at the University of Florida, I kind of had this feeling as if like the power you have with storytelling and documentary is something that just always was a format that I felt was respected with being a good steward to information or to bring people to a topic. So to go to what you said, so how I met Cliff was when we were doing this series. It was a situation where I always feel like when you have a story that you're telling, you have to have either skin in the game, an interest, or an understanding that will spend the time to really jump into. And with mental health awareness, I think that was something that I struggled with at a time when I lost my father.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I lost my father, I got to a really dark place. And thankfully, because I am a father with 4 wonderful children and a loving wife, it was a time that I kind of could understand that dark place, but I was able to not go that far because of the lives that I had to be there for, the people that I had to be aware of that are not just me. But when that happened, I felt like I had the understanding of what people were dealing with in different areas of, accepting mental health as something that we need to work on, the same as anything else. And so we put this, proposal together to work with the Able Channel, who's trying to really put some important stories together. And I remember of all of the stories that I went through to kind of really understand the characters, I felt like your story spoke to me in such a different way, in which I felt like there was this like genuine understanding of, what you were going through, and then how you helped all of these people. And so I know our first call we had, when I got off that call, it was like, I knew right away, I was like, wow, I think if we end up doing this is a friend, because, you connect with somebody and you understand it's just about who they are, the genuine, the validation of what it is that they're doing and how you can collaborate. So,
I was always amazed, and I always asked you that. I said, how the world did you come up with calling me? Right. And, I saw your spreadsheet and all the research you did, and you did a whole bunch of research on it. But I want to say that, meeting you and meeting your team, I mean, we became friends very fast, and you guys of course stayed in my house during filming, and that was a lot of fun. But I will tell you that the boys, Lloyd and Junior, both still talk about you guys being in the house, but also everybody was friendly. We all ate dinner together. When we were done filming, we would play, what was that, Smash Brothers, or what was that game we
yeah,
played? And
something I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, remember that? Yeah, I got pictures of them on my phone still. I'll have to send those to Kevin. He can put them up while the people are watching the podcast. But that was just a lot of fun. But I would say that your ability to get people to talk on that documentary was amazing, because my brother never talked about that night. And the fact that you were able, if you guys go out and watch that documentary on me out there on an Able channel, my brother talks about his experience in finding me that night. When I attempted suicide at his house, and he'd never talked about that before. He'd never had that conversation with me. He didn't have that conversation with me after you left either. So what he said on that film, he's never repeated. But I remember when we were in Kansas City and you were filming, and it was crazy busy, right? Because I think you just flew in for a couple of hours and then flew back out. I mean, because you were doing all 6 stories at once. But I remember in his living room, you became fixated on it. Remember this? The clock on top of the mantle in his living room?
Yeah.
And you just were fixated on that, and you knew you had to get that into the shot. And he still laughs about that. And you did a wonderful job in getting it in. It's pretty amazing how your mind works, Vincent, right? And so I think that's why you're so good at what you do with your documentaries, and being able to see a picture, even if the person you're talking to doesn't see that picture. Right. And so I remember when we were in the, and I can share pictures too, when we were in the hospital at Truman, where they took me, and you wanted to get pictures of the wheel of I think it was the wheel of the bed that they wheel you in, and how you did the emergency room and all that. And it was just pretty amazing how you were able to do that in a way that it enhanced the story that we were telling, as I was telling the story. And I remember that day it was god awful long. we were jumping back and forth and everything. And then I think it was, I think it was 11:30 at night when we sat on the couch and did my interview where I talk about things, and I was just wiped out, tired. But I mean, you got out of me, and it was tiring because I know the next morning you flew out, and then we drove down south to Aurora, Missouri, where I grew up, and did all the filming down there. So it's pretty amazing. So I would employ anybody who's listening. Please go out to Able Channel. I think you just got to enter your email address and you can watch it for free. But it is season 1, episode 1, and you can go out and look and see what we're talking about. With the amazing work that he did. Vincent, one thing I want to talk about is you also have done podcasts, not yourself, but you recorded a podcast for a gentleman, and I watched the podcast, and he was called Raven. And if you haven't seen or listened to this podcast, you really need to go out. And I want Vincent to kind of tell that story about him, because you'll do it way more because you were actually with the guy. But he has an amazing story. He's a runner, and he's done what go ahead and tell the audience what Raven is about.
So, the company that I worked with is Imperative Films. They're a really fascinating group that tries to find stories that they felt like haven't been brought to a larger audience. And this one in particular, I was born in Miami, Florida, and my grandmother had some property in the South Beach area, which now you hear South Beach and that's like, oh, well, that's a very fancy area. But at the time it wasn't very nice area. It was on the beach, but it was not like what it is today. And yeah. I remember as a kid always being out there and seeing this guy. And I mean, I'm talking like 2nd, 3rd grade, this guy running out on the beach. And I was always like, what is this guy? Like, he kind of had that, like homeless look, but he was healthy. Yeah. And you're like, why is he? And I'm just a kid not realizing it. So fast forward to many years later, and I find out this is this known runner guy. He's run on the beach in South Florida on South Beach every year. All the time, no matter what, hurricane, rain, lightning, thunderstorms, whatever. So I started digging a little deeper and realized that he's on a running streak. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm fascinated. Like, anybody that can do something consistently like that, that's remarkable. Then I go even deeper and I realize he's run 8 miles on the sand, on the beach, which is not the same as running, on, a trail or, pavement. He's run 8 miles every day since 1975. He's never missed a day. So I was immediately just like floored with like, I have to meet this guy and talk to him. So I went there, sat down with him, and like anything, I mean, I think that's to me, I'm not saying like anything's wrong with like media or journalism, but like a documentarian, you want to understand the person. I'm not coming in there just to like meet you for 20 minutes, break bread, and then like tell your story. I want to get to know the person. I want to have a friend at the end of this. And that's what I think, similar to our relationship, in a different capacity, I mean, was with the Raven. We sat down, we talked, we went through things, and I said, like, I really want to tell your story. He had a book written about him. He had a lot of other material that people have done. But I said, I want to tell it in a different capacity. I want to understand like why you started this streak, what it was. And, from that, really focus on, you as an artist, because he's a musician. And so that was kind of how I went into it. And it was a very different project than anything I'd worked on, because I've never been the host. I'll be the host of, things like as a director and producer where I'm calling the shots, but not where I'm telling the story. Like even with you, like you don't hear me on camera. You might hear me ask one question, but it's like we're separate. I don't like being, the focus. And this was an area that I went outside of my comfort zone, and I had to do that. And the crazy thing is that, it was very much about mental health. It was an idea of this gentleman struggling with something that was stolen from him. And when it was stolen from him, he had to clear his mind. Mm-hmm. And similar to the Forrest Gump story, which came after this actually happened. So if anything, you could say that was borrowed from his story. He ran to clear his mind, and then he never stopped. And then after he never stopped, he just kept going, and he's still doing it today. I mean, it's remarkable. I mean, anybody that's listening, I recommend you check it out. And I mean, whether it's you listen to the 8 episodes that, I put together, or even just like read about him. Yeah. He's such an inspiration that, he's done to me. I mean, I feel like I run now, and it doesn't matter what the weather is. It doesn't matter the pain, because I just think of my friend, the Raven, and how he's going to do it no matter what. And, it's not even, he's 72 years old. I mean, he does not run at the pace he ran 20 years ago, right, but he does it. And he does it consistently, which we're going to go there. Cliff and I have said this. We're going to try to make a trip to go to South Florida so we can run. Yeah. So we have to do that so we can run together with the Raven.
Yeah, we should do that, and then do a short film of us going down there and going and running with him, and then we can show it on the podcast.
For sure, that would be awesome. But just to include, I mean, it's a really interesting story that I had to kind of find out as I was telling it. So much of it, like, normally in a narrative film, like a film that has a script, you write out your beginning, middle, and end. And even in a documentary, you have a goal of what you're doing, but you don't know where it's going to bring you. It's this organic process. Even just with your story, I said, okay, we're going to do these things. I remember the first thing we met was in Milwaukee at an event. Yep. And then from that, everything kind of fell into place. And we're like, oh, well, let's go here. Let's do this. And then I love that about what I do, because I get to, experience some very fascinating things, but it's also sometimes a little chaotic when you have to do it, quick. And this was in the middle of the pandemic that all this was happening. Yeah. So there was a curfew at 10 p.m. And, I think you see I'm in a van right now. Mm-hmm. I literally produced that entire podcast and a soundtrack, which was 14 album tracks in this van, which is crazy. So, all to say, it was a great project, and I'm so grateful, I had an opportunity to do it. And I'd love for people to take a listen. I think it's a very inspiring story, like all of these. So.
It is. And how he did the songwriting and got into that, and, the trauma that he dealt with as a child, I think that affects a lot of people out there. When he talked about, not really having a relationship with his dad, and how all that transpired throughout his life. I think a lot of people can relate to that, but the mere fact that he every day since 1975 has ran eight miles on that beach. And even during COVID, he figured it out. I mean, he figured out how to go out there and continue to run and not miss. He ran when he was sick, and he just did every single day he was out there doing it. I was in Kansas City last weekend, and my brother's got a new neighbor that moved in next door. They're restoring the house next door to my brother's. I don't know if you remember that old blue house that was next door to his. It's kind of run down, and the people finally got old enough they sold it, and so a young couple bought it. And I walk into his house, and you appreciate this. And so in his living room, they remodeled a couple of rooms in the house, right? You know why? And when I say this, you're gonna laugh, because you know what I'm gonna get at. They remodeled this room, and he had these beautiful bookshelves built. And guess what was inside the bookshelves? Records. So awesome. And you know that he did that exactly to display that. And I say all that because Vincent, not too long ago, had done a documentary called Record Safari, and you talk about people who collect the old vinyl. And the guy, I don't remember the guy's name that you went around with, but so I told him about it, and I shared him the link to it so he could go out and see it, because I mean, if you're into that, you're gonna want to watch Record Safari, because that was an amazing. And that guy who, I don't remember his name, but you can tell his name when you speak here, Vincent. But you talk about the crazy times and running around with him and going in there trying to find these records and everything. Everybody's got old vinyl laying around their house, and they always wonder, is this worth something or not, or is it valuable? And if you watch Record Safari, you might get some insight on whether or not, you have something valuable in your house or not. And I know I called you a couple of times when we were out doing thrift shops. Hey, Vincent, look at this. Is it worth anything? But so you had the story about, the Raven and the podcast about him. You did Record Safari, which this guy was extremely passionate about records and what he did. And that whole group of people that you interviewed on Record Safari was pretty amazing, because they're very passionate about finding that record or completing that collection or doing that. And that's pretty amazing, because I know there's people out there listening who do that and who enjoy that. And so if you're watching the podcast right now, you can go to Life is My Movie, and he has links to all that. But Record Safari was, I mean, I know you've put in a lot of road miles, but I think you enjoyed doing that one. Am I wrong?
Oh yeah, no, without a doubt. I mean, it's this idea of, and I tell my kids this in a joking manner, like talk to strangers, right? Like we always say, like keep to ourselves. But I think you meet such interesting people, or find so many kind of common bonds with people by making small talk with a stranger. Whether it's on a flight or in a public place, or just being kind or helping someone. And I remember I was in upstate New York on another project I was doing with IBM on education. And all of a sudden, I see this guy walk into this hotel with bell bottoms and this long hair. He looks like he's like a roadie for a band. And I'm like, this guy is not from, what is this? I got to know who he is. And we start chit chatting, and he tells me he is from LA, which I was living at the time, and he collects vinyl. And his job is to buy vinyl for the Coachella Music Festival's pop-up music shop. And I'm like blown away. I'm like, what? Like what that's your job? Like, and from that, when we got back to LA, we had lunch, we talked, and I was enamored with not only his passion for vinyl and, that whole idea of collecting physical media, but it was his knowledge of so many genres of music. Like some people just know what they know. You might be a country guy and country. That's it. I can't tell you anything about funk rock or, reggae. This guy just knows everything about it. And like the odd things that you would think, like there's no way he could contain all of that information about something obscure that happened. And he's just a very lovable guy. He just loves that idea of what a record can do to share music with somebody to like kind of bring us all together. And it was a fun project. We went around the country. We literally started in LA. And we drove all across the country with no plan. It was like, okay, where are we going next? Where are we going next? And we end in Texas for in Austin. There's this big record show called the Austin Record Show, where like a lot of collectors come. And along the way, we meet with artists, other collectors, different shops, different restaurants, like explore nature. I mean, it was a really fun project to kind of like experience that and like kind of jump in that world and then jump out. But his name's Alex Rodriguez, not the baseball player. And the name of the film, and then his name is Record Safari. That's like his nickname he goes by. And since that movie came out, not because of the movie necessarily, he actually has a record shop now called Record Safari in LA.
Wow, that's awesome.
Amazing spot. So I recommend, people check that out. I mean, it's if you like physical media, and you're an old record guy in any genre of music. I mean, there's so many amazing people in it that cross all types of genres and talk about so much, from the classics all the way to honky tonk to rap to jazz, you name it. So it was a fun film for sure.
And it was amazing because he gets excited about any genre of music too. If you watch that documentary, when he goes into a record store, I mean, he's just like a kid in a candy store. He's looking for all the different flavors out there, and he's like a madman going through there. And that was pretty amazing, to watch. And I really, I don't collect, vinyl. I'm not into that. But that being said, you watch the trailer to that and you're going to want to watch it. I mean, that's, I knew you were filming that and we talked about that as you were filming my documentary. And I watched the trailer. I was like, man, I got to watch this. And then I told friends of mine about it and they're like, oh man, we got to watch that too. And so it's kind of funny how that kind of snowballed with everybody wanting to see that. But, Vincent, I just want to say that, being mental health and what I did. And you talked a little bit about your father passing and the impact that I had on you. And we're not going to go into great detail about that, but we can talk about as much as you want. But I remember you did not want to fly because you received, bad news about your father while you were flying. And you were driving an insane amount of miles going back and for from California to Virginia and back in Tennessee and all the others. And I was concerned for your health. I mean, because that's not healthy to do what you were doing. And I remember you and I had a conversation, and I always wore a bracelet similar to what you have on your wrist now, rosewood beads, and I always wore that every single day because I was told it brings you good luck and good fortune. And before we ended up filming, I gave that to you because I told you that it would, make you feel safe and keep bad things from happening. And I was very honored to see that. Although that one you said it broke, mine broke too, and I had to get a different kind. They just do that over time. But you were still wearing that, and it kind of gives you that comfort that it gave me when I was wearing it, and I was really moved by that. And I think for a lot of veterans out there or anybody who has mental health issues, to have that moment with somebody or have somebody that just cared just enough to take that time to listen to you, but then try to offer something as simple as a bracelet, that could help you. And I say that because, I always say that the smallest kind gesture can always change somebody's life outlook, right? And it could be saying hi or how you doing or calling or texting. You just never know how that's going to affect somebody. And you and I grew a close bond over the years that I've known you, and I'm really happy that small gesture that I gave you was able to help you and realize, because it wasn't healthy with what you were doing. And not only, not the driving part, I got that, but just the mental fatigue and what you always were thinking, and we all do this trap, right? And so we always think that something bad's going to happen, or if I go this way, something's bad going to happen because something bad happened on that experience, right? And you always go back to that. There for a while after the boat rescue and of course 9/11 and all that, I had to work through all those, all that process and everything. So it was really nice to talk with you about it. I appreciate you, sharing that with me. It meant, well, anytime somebody shares me a story of their trauma or something that went on, I'm very appreciative of that, because I know what it takes to talk about it, right? It's nothing easy to talk about. And that's one of the things I want to do with Mental Health Warrior and the podcast is kind of, give people that platform to listen to or open up or have that conversation with somebody in hopes that, maybe they can, find a little bit of closure in being able to continue and move forward with their life and not being stuck. You were kind of stuck in that moment, and your fear kept you stuck in that moment. And I think for a lot of people that happens. And then as time goes on, you don't know how to break that cycle, right? And I think it's hard for a lot of people. And, we were talking before the show a little bit about it. But I just want to say that, I appreciate you sharing a story, and I'm really glad that I was able to maybe take some of that pain that you were feeling or anxiety that you had, away from you. Maybe look at it differently than what you was before, and realizing that you can do this similar things or can go doing that, and not always bad things will happen. And the first time you do it and something bad doesn't happen, then anxiety goes down a little bit, right? And then the second time it goes down a little bit more. Then the third time it goes down a little bit more. And then after a while, you still think about it, but it's not, the forefront of your mind. So I just want to say all that to say, it's appreciative. And that's the first thing I noticed when we would start conversations, that you had that bracelet on.
No, it was a really difficult time, I guess, coming out of something that I didn't properly kind of, heal from. And I think that in a way, working with the stories of people that had, dealt with different experiences of how to kind of, work through trauma or work through, deep, dark places of events that happened. I think that it was in an odd way therapeutic to me, because it helped me kind of reflect on my own things, as well as like take from that because of what people did to work through it, or what they did to find a positive way to kind of help others. Just like with the experiences you had, think of just the positive impact you're having on other people's lives, and it's like to think that if you weren't able to work through it, all of those other people that you've impacted or that you've touched in some way with, people hearing your story or people being there to take that step to get help or get a call because of hearing your story or because of interacting with you. I think that to me is such a important, factor. And so I know when we talked and you gave me that bracelet, it really helped me kind of, understand, I guess, what you were dealing with and something that gave you peace and how I can do that. So I feel like it's a thing that's with me now forever. So, like I think you mentioned that bracelet unfortunately fell apart, but I kept all of the pieces. And so when I put them together, I put one in of the original band because I've worn these since, it's been 2 years, but since we did that. And I think that I will always wear them. And it will be something that always gives me, I guess, just like a peace and just an understanding that sometimes our mind and body won't allow us to do unless we take that second to like, okay, let's slow things down. Let's think about it and having that support. So what you said, that what you did for me, the same way as you tell, stories or, engage with, audiences that maybe don't feel like talking about their feelings is a good thing. I think that same thing's true with just having a conversation with somebody that, you don't know that might not have a smile on their face or is dealing with a problem of their own, is just being there as a friend. Because I love that feeling when I walk by someone and you just, you give a smile or you just, ask, hey, how's your day going? Whatever. And I know sometimes that comes across as not being as, sincere or direct, but it is. I mean, I feel that energy between people or the conversations that come from that smile. So I really appreciate you, doing that and being there as a friend for me. I mean, I as much as the documentaries are a lot of traveling and a lot of chaotic, don't know where it's going. I love what I'm able to make with experiences and the new friends along the way. I mean, it's such a great thing that I feel, honored to be able to have the ability to do that and the support of a loving, family, with my wife and my kids that understand and, are there to support me whenever they know, okay, like dad's going to be gone for, a month because of this. So, which I think is great because we are making plans. Obviously I know Cliff's family, but he doesn't know my kids other than like a FaceTime thing or hearing them in the background. But we definitely are going to try to make a trip to see him up in the DC area, just because it only makes sense, and I think that's a great thing we look forward to for sure.
Well, and it'll be fun to have you and your family here. I know Lloyd will enjoy it. He always enjoys it especially when kids come to visit. We talked about 2 of your documentaries, and I wanted you to touch on 2 others that I know that you did. And one of them was, and if I get the name wrong, please correct me, The True Cost of Fashion. And then the other one you did when you was at the refugee camp in Kenya. Was it Kenya? What was the refugee?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called Warehouse.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I'll talk about those. So I guess the first one on fast fashion, The True Cost. That was a film. I didn't direct that one. I was a producer on it, but the director, Andrew Morgan, we had connected right at the time that I was finishing up a documentary on manufacturing. It was called American Made Movie. Not the film with Tom Cruise, but a documentary looking at the impact of, what's happened in manufacturing since the kind of fall of Detroit and like the way in which, things have changed in our country. And we connected because of that. And I realized he was trying to put this film together that was like looking at the impact that fast fashion had from kind of an environmental humanitarian side. And so I kind of partnered with him and helped him to, produce this film. And it was a great film that really helped people to think a little more about the money we spend on this like clothing that we just like step and repeat and replace, and that has no real kind of value outside of things. And I think the beauty of that film is the impact it's had worldwide. All of my films, I hear from people. I mean, they'll message me on social media, on Instagram, whatever, which I love because it's about like I'm I'm nobody. I'm just a storyteller, and I love to have that kind of outlet to be able to help, make sense of what the story is or like how it impacted them. And that film, really, of anything I've been a part of, has had the largest worldwide reach. Like, I mean, even today, I mean, it's what, 5 years old, and I still feel like every month you get like a couple people that just reach out and say like, "Thank you so much for like opening my eyes," because it didn't. I don't think a film should ever tell you very strict instructions of don't do this, but more kind of like open up an idea to make you rethink something. Like, wait, does this make sense? Does it make sense at Forever 21 that we're spending this amount of money on a piece of clothing that's going to last us one fashion season? And then the people that make it are getting paid, peanuts, and they're not, fair working conditions. And, there should never be something unsafe about, the manufacturing of wardrobe. Like, that's just not, the textile world should not be an unsafe environmental thing with the technologies that we have today. So that was a really, special project. The other one you mentioned was Warehoused. And that was a really unique story that I wasn't actually supposed to direct that. And I know right before I was producing it and my company was putting it together, but right before production started, the director had some real big insecurities of like going to Kenya and telling the story because of safety and other stuff. And so I kind of got that like dropped on me a couple weeks before we were supposed to start production.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what do I do? And then, the irony is like the wife is, you think would be like, oh no, like stay here, do this. She's like, no, you need to go. She's like, if you don't do this, you're going to regret that you didn't like, take the reins and like see it through. And so we went there, and it's one of the largest refugee camps in the world. It's on the border of Ethiopia and Somalia. And it's the border of Kenya, where you feel like you think of Kenya and you think of the safari and the green and the rivers. This is the desert. There's nothing there. It's literally like uncharted land. And it was a fascinating story that we were able to really understand the plight of the refugee in a specific area that took people from all areas, whether it was the Congo region or whether it was, Somali or, Ethiopia, whatever it is. And we understand kind of what they go through with once they're brought into a refugee camp, which is there to help them with, UNHCR and all these other partnerships to help make life something, safe and comfortable for them. It's also the negative side of it. They're kind of trapped there. Because when you're there and you want to return back to your homeland or return to another area, you can't do that, And I think that we obviously have a different perspective of being an immigrant or being a refugee or being resettled based on, what's going on right now in, Ukraine, or what's going on in, areas like Syria. So, I mean, everywhere has like unique stories based on why someone is trying to like escape the place that they're from, or find shelter and safety, whether it's a horrible monsoon or earthquake or unruly government, whatever it is. But I think no matter the type of person or what they're dealing with, it's the same situation of how do they find a safe way to move forward in a new land or a new place that's going to take them in. And I think that's kind of what we did with the story, was try to really give people understanding the history of, I guess, what happened with the refugees from early days to now, and then kind of like where people are at. With which to close on that, just in all of my films and everything I do, I really try to always imagine that the person watching or listening or whatever it is, they know nothing about this topic. They might have zero understanding. So I always try my best to give people kind of like a crash course or a layman like basic understanding of the history of it. Yeah. So whether, the manufacturing one, in the first 15 minutes of the film, you're not going to be bored with some like slide projector thing, but like you're going to get an understanding of the history of manufacturing, like what happened and how it got to the way it is. Yeah. The same way as the refugee crisis. the same way as, a documentary that's not as deep about a record collector, you understand what happened at the very beginning of the fall of vinyl records with digital technology and the compact disc. And, now we have MP3 players. I mean, it's all about understanding the space you're in, even to the point of mental health. Because although we're going through these stories where people can understand the plight of what someone was dealing with, they have to at least understand what got it there. And from a, not necessarily a academic way, but like from the understanding, I guess, of what leads to these things. And then most importantly, which I think you do, is about the call to action, like how to help people. Because there's nothing wrong with that. It's all about knowing what to do when you are struggling with something and knowing that it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah. Well, and it brings up you bring up a lot of good points, and I forgot about the manufacturing in USA. I've watched all your documentaries, and it's kind of funny because when you started filming on me, I was at my brother's house and we were binge watching your documentaries. I don't think I ever told you that. So, because I wanted to get a better understanding of you, because that's just how I am. And you were going to come, be in my house and stuff. And I just want to get a better understanding on how you portray a story. And it's exactly what you talk about. Any one of your documentaries, if you watch the first 10 minutes of it, you're going to watch it till the end, because you do a very good job in roping in the audience to it, like you said, because, I learned things about the refugee camp that I didn't know. I learned things about manufacturing I didn't know, and so forth. But I think that's really what you want to do when you do your documentaries. But as far as mental health and everything, it's you brought up a lot of great points, with it. And when you're a veteran like I am, or Kevin, or people on Veterans Trash Talk and everything, I think hearing different ways or different stories, I think, helps them. I think, we stay in our community because we understand, war, or we understand death or things differently because of what we've seen, what we've been through. But the same could be said for you, because you've gone out there and you've gone to Kenya and you've gone to those places. And, even though it was a different perspective, but you still saw things that most normal people don't see. And it's I always tell people that it doesn't matter what your experience is, it's how your brain processes that experience, right? And so we know with PTSD, what bothers me may not bother you, and vice versa. And people just need to know that that's okay, right? That's why we always say it's okay not to be okay. But also, I think for some, especially for guys, right, it's like, oh, buck up, you'd be all right. Come on, quit being a sissy or whatever, right? But really, that's the wrong thing to say, because A, you don't know anybody's background, and B, you don't know what's going on in their head. And a good example is in the documentary, you talked to Jack Dutil, and he was with me at the Pentagon 9/11, and his take on 9/11 was different than mine, right? And he talked about that in the documentary, on how I internalized, the guilt of not finding anybody, and his was anger on wanting to go over and, kill as many people that did the attacks. So it was two different perspectives. We were both warrant officers. We both went to warrant officer candidate school together, but we had two different ways of looking at the same situation. And I think sometimes that we forget that there's always two sides to every story, and what affects one may not affect the other. But, Vincent, with that, I want to say thank you for taking the time to come on my podcast. And before we close out, is there anything that you'd like to close out with before we end the show tonight?
I'm just curious. Tell me a little bit about kind of the mission of the podcast. I just would love to know more. Just like what is that thing that you're hoping is going to be the big, I guess, push for the future of the podcast going into the next quarter of this year.
When I was approached by it, I went on Veterans Trash Talk as a guest, right, of me doing my speaking events, and then Nick had approached me about doing a podcast. I never thought about it before, and doing it. And thank God I got teamed up with Kevin, because my podcast would have begun and ended with the first one, because the first one was recorded with Chris, who does the live shows. But Chris became very busy. But my main goal when I sat down and thought about the mental health warrior and came up with that, is I want to help the veteran community, but I also want to help the community at large. So if you watch my podcast, I've had marathoners come on. I've had, people who don't have anything to do with the military, but has had, mental health issues, and come from that, because mental health affects not only the veteran community, but affects, like I said, everybody. And my goal with the mental health warrior is to let everybody know that it's okay to feel that way. I was on a call today with a company, and the guy became emotional just because we were just having a conversation like we are now. And I just listened to him, and gave him some advice on, hey, it's okay to feel that way. That's normal. But you just gotta need to look forward. So I really want, and I'm hopeful that my podcast will continue, and that I can just help, the community at large out there. I had Linda came on my podcast. I know Linda Diaz and her story, but her story and what she does with, because we all have children. You have children, I have children, Kevin had children. And what's going on from COVID with our children is with the mental health issues and things like that is very important. That's why I had her on the show. I believe that mind, body, and spirit, and getting those three in line is very important. And I don't know if you watched the last one, but now I'm doing yoga. I've started doing yoga, and I never did yoga before. And I kind of had not a bad feeling about yoga, but I thought, yes, that's all hippie, sissy crap, whatever. I'm not doing yoga, right? Stretch and feel the earth and all this other stuff. But I had a friend of mine who taught yoga, and she came on my podcast. And, she opened up about, being raped in college, and you can go back and watch that podcast, and she talks about that. But she really got me thinking about that. And what I found out is I can't relax. And so through yoga, I'm learning to relax. And I'm hoping by portraying that story to other men out there, that, go and try something new, whether it's running, swimming, biking, yoga, reading, watching different podcasts, going out watching, different documentaries that you've done. I just hopeful that I can get people to look at things a little bit differently. And so if I can help one person do that, then I think I've done my job. But I will tell you that I'm doing yoga once a week now, and it has really. I've only done it 4 times, but it has really improved. I have injuries to my back, right, and I get Botox in it. And usually about this time, I'm towards the end of the 90 days of my Botox shot, and I'm usually in a lot of pain and numbness and stuff. And I will tell you that that's a lot less. And I think it's just because of the stretching and learning to relax that I was never able to do before. And I didn't realize how intense I was. And one thing about yoga that I had to realize is it's not a competition, right? Because type A guy, always a competition. It's more about understanding why you're doing that pose, or why you're doing that stretch, and why that's important. And for me, I do restorative yoga, and but I say all that had I never done the podcast, or never had her on, I would never went and done yoga. Right. I wouldn't have done it ever. And so I tried something new. And so I want everybody out there to say, hey, it's okay to try, something new. And Monica said, you got to at least do yoga twice. Because the first time you'd be kind of nervous and really, concentrate on the different poses and things. But go back the second time. And she talks about the mental release she had. And once you can kind of get to that point, you kind of feel yourself, relaxing and sleeping better. And it was pretty amazing. I don't know if you've ever done yoga or not. And so, but you should try it. If you come out to Virginia, we'll go do yoga at the studio I go to. But so, really, to go back to your original question, is that's what I want to do. I just want to give people with their mental health to look at it a different way and know that it's normal. But you can go on and be healthy, and continue to live your life, the best life that you can live, because we only get one chance. You don't get a do-over, right? I felt like I got a do-over because I survived my attempt, but I also believe I survived my attempt for a reason. And you were there. You heard the story. I mean, had my brother not found me, I wouldn't be sitting here. But then I think about all the relationships of all the people since then. and all the lives that hopefully that I've impacted, and the lives that I've saved since then. And it's the same with you and how you tell your story. We're trying to make the world a better place and more accepting to everything.
No, for sure. We're speaking the same language. I think that's the beauty of storytelling, is it allows us to kind of break down those barriers and be intrigued, to want to know more, to go deeper, go down a rabbit hole because maybe you didn't really care about something. So the beauty of, like you just said, you never would have tried yoga, and then all of a sudden you did, and now you're like, wow, like this is great. I think it's an important thing for sure. I mean, healthy habits, that maybe we never wanted to try or never experienced. I mean, we should do those things. Just make the most of it. So, well, I really appreciate you having me on, Cliff. Thank you so much. I can't wait for us to, see each other in person again soon. And thanks. It really means a lot.
I just want to say I appreciate you coming on. I know you're busy. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Mental Health Warrior, and I want to thanks again for Vincent, who's a filmmaker with Life Is My Movie. Please take time to go out and visit his website at lifeismymovie.com. We'll have the link provided both when the podcast airs and also when when the show's scrolling. Take a moment to look at all of his documentaries that he's done. They're very moving, and the work that he does is amazing. And once again, I want you to be sure and like and subscribe to all of our videos out there, YouTube videos, Facebook pages, and all that. That's why we're able to do what we do. If you do go out to veteranstrashtalk.com to the shop, feel free to use promo code CB2022 to save 10% on any merchandise that you purchase. All proceeds, go to help veterans. I don't make any money off this. Kevin doesn't make any money off this. We solely do it to help veterans out there. So thanks, everybody. Have a good night and take care.